In 1999, Inspector Gadget bumbled his way onto the big screen. Played by Matthew Broderick, this live-action adventure based on the popular 1980s cartoon is an origin story, which explores how Inspector Gadget became a high-tech, gadget-laden police officer, be that a clumsy, accident-prone one, where along with his niece Penny and dog Brain, he must defeat the evil Dr. Claw, played by Rupert Everett. However, the big question is, can a live-action movie live up to the infectious zaniness of the original beloved cartoon? Well, today we are going to find out as we explore 10 things that you didn't know about the Inspector Gadget movie. So, go Gadget, 10 things you didn't know as we check this beast out. Number 10. The origins of Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget was created by American animator Andy Hayward, who in 1981 joined the production company DiC Entertainment. You know that company where the little boy is laying in bed and randomly says DiC. And upon joining the company, he came up with the concept of Inspector Gadget, a clumsy gadget-laden police officer who, despite his high-tech infantry, is less RoboCop and more Inspector Clouseau. The idea was a mishmash of Get Smart, Dino Mutt the Wonder Dog, and the $6 Million Man. Gadget would also be accompanied by the true brains of the operation, his niece Penny and dog Brain, while constantly thwarting the evil schemes of the organization MAD and its evil leader Dr. Claw, whose face is a complete mystery. That is until you bought the action figure. Oh yeah, and he often blows up his long-suffering Chief Quimby. The character of Gadget was voiced by the legendary Don Adams, who played Maxwell Smart in the as-mentioned Get Smart, and the original show ran from 1983 to 1985, consisting of 86 episodes, as well as that iconic theme song. Not to mention a truly expensive doll that all the kids wanted but no one could afford. And later down the track, there was even a Christmas special in 1992 called Gadget Saves Christmas. So needless to say, Inspector Gadget was one of the most popular cartoons of the 1980s. Number 9. The movie wasn't the first live-action Inspector Gadget. Now, the 1999 Inspector Gadget movie wasn't the first time we saw Inspector Gadget in live-action format. That honour belongs to fellow DiC Entertainment property, the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, where in 1989 a live-action version of the character came face-to-face with Mario. I guess Inspector Gadget and the Mario Brothers are from the same universe. And the part was played by Maurice LaMarche, who at that time was probably best known for voicing the character of Egon Spengler in the Ghostbusters animated series, The Real Ghostbusters. Once again, another DiC property. No wonder back in those days people were randomly saying DiC in the middle of the night. Back then there was so much DiC, it was everywhere. Regardless, this did prove that there was a vested interest in bringing the character of Inspector Gadget into live-action format. Number 8. Original Studio. The production of the Inspector Gadget movie goes all the way back to 1993, when Universal Pictures got their hands on the film rights for the character. The original plan was the movie to be produced by Ghostbusters director Ivan Reitman, with a script written by comic book writer Jeff Loeb, who also previously wrote the scripts for the movies Teen Wolf and Commando. However, things changed when Disney bought out the DiC company. I guess they too were laying in bed thinking about DiC. So now the House of Mouse took over production of the Inspector Gadget movie, where Reitman and Loeb were gone, with a new script written by Friday Night Lights writer Kerry Ehrin, as well as Zach Penn, who wrote the scripts for several X-Men movies and the Incredible Hulk movie, with The Burbs writer Dana Olson also contributing to the script and story. At one point, Steven Spielberg himself was in talks to be executive producer on the movie. But, as fate would have it, that didn't happen and Inspector Gadget didn't get the Spielberg magic. Number 7, Go Gadget Search. So the search was on to find an actor who could bring Inspector Gadget to life on the big screen. And wowzers! It seems that every big actor and his pet goldfish were considered for the part, including, but not limited to, Tom Hanks, Adam Sandler, Jerry Seinfeld, Michael Keaton, Mike Myers, Robin Williams, Tim Allen, Mel Gibson, Kevin Kline, Jim Carrey, and many, many more. When Steven Spielberg was in talks to produce the movie, his number one picks for the part were either Steve Martin or Chevy Chase. And at one stage, Brendan Fraser was the number one choice by the studio, but he turned it down to star in George of the Jungle instead. So, what to do? Well, the production had to turn to a kid who takes too many days off school.
Bueller, 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 Bueller.
Yep. Ferris Bueller himself, Matthew Broderick, would be cast as Inspector Gadget, and the sinister Robo-Gadget. He was popular at that time, as the previous year he also starred in the American Godzilla movie. Look, I love Matthew Broderick. He will always forever be Ferris Bueller, okay? And nothing can take that away. So now that I've gotten that out the way, in my opinion, he's just not remotely Inspector Gadget. So to me, this was a miscast. I think that had they gone with Jim Carrey or Mike Myers, then that could have been amazing. Especially Jim Carrey. On a side note, I think Matthew Broderick looks more comfortable and like he's having lots of fun when he's playing the movie's evil villain, Robo-Gadget. Number 6, and the rest of the cast. So with Broderick cast as the live-action movie version of Inspector Gadget, what about the rest of the characters? Well, when it came to the villainous Dr. Claw, several big actors were considered, including Dennis Hopper, Tommy Lee Jones, Tim Curry, that would have been awesome, Jack Nicholson, and John Lithgow. However, the part went to British actor Rupert Everett, who made it big at that time thanks to starring in My Best Friend's Wedding. Lindsay Lohan was offered the role of Penny, but the part went to Pete and Pete actress Michelle Trachtenberg, and later on in her career she would go on to star in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gossip Girl. When it came to the voice of the Gadgetmobile, Eddie Murphy and Chris Tucker were considered, but it was D.L. Hewley who would be lending his voice. The part of Dr. Brenda Bradford, who, to the best of my knowledge, was an original character created purely for the movie, was offered to Cameron Diaz. But she was like, heck no, I'm going to star in this Any Given Sunday movie instead. So the role was given to singer-actress Jolie Fisher. And I feel sorry for her in this movie. Look, Inspector Gadget blue all over her. Look, there's the colour blue all over the place. And the original Inspector Gadget voice actor, Don Adams, provided the voice of Brain. Number 5, the director was chosen because of a series of popular adverts. So if you think finding an actor to play the part of Inspector Gadget was hard enough, well, finding the director was a whole new ball part. At one stage, okay, get this. At one stage, Martin Scorsese was considered to direct. And just imagine, Inspector Gadget, the violent, gritty street crime version, with Inspector Gadget brutally blowing people away. I actually kind of really want to see that. Along the way, another popular choice was the Farrelly brothers, Peter and Bobby, who at that stage were leading comedy filmmakers, having helmed Dumb and Dumber and There's Something About Mary. In fact, it was their idea to cast Jim Carrey. And you see, this right here, this is the Inspector Gadget movie we should have gotten. Sadly though, this didn't work out, and the director who was hired was David Kellogg, whose other directing credit included the movie, Cool as Ice. You know that movie where Vanilla Ice says, "Yo, you need to drop the zero and get with the hero." However, the main reason Kellogg was hired was because at that time he directed a string of commercials called The Adventures of Seinfeld and Superman, where Jerry Seinfeld, along with an animated Superman, were used to advertise American Express. And the commercials were very popular at that time, so David Kellogg it was. And to be fair, he does a good job as far as directing goes and the look of the movie. So when it comes to the director's talents, there's no complaints from me. Number 4, a movie effects legend worked on Inspector Gadget. The Inspector Gadget movie was filmed around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Los Angeles, California, with filming taking place from July 1998 and wrapping up in October 1998. There are actually several talented people on board in the production, including the legendary Stan Winston, who worked on the makeup and practical effects, as well as the animatronics. The 90s really was Winston's time to shine, thanks to the likes of Terminator 2 Judgment Day and Jurassic Park. And so it would have made sense to turn to him to bring Inspector Gadget and his crazy gadgets to life on the big screen. Interestingly, the Inspector Gadget movie also featured several popular songs from artists who were big at that time, including the song All Star by Smash Mouth, which that very same year was also featured in fellow superhero comedy movie Mystery Men. In fact, Mystery Men even featured in the All Star music video. So despite being used in Inspector Gadget, it was very much a song made for Mystery Men, but a few years later it would be permanently tied to Shrek after being used in that movie.
Hey now, you're an all-star, get your game.
But you know what? I think back in those days, All-Star was used for a lot of movies, particularly in scenes that involve comical day-in-the-life scenarios of wacky characters. Number 3, the last movie made by a production company. Inspector Gadget was made in correlation with DiC and Disney, as well as a production company called Caravan Pictures. You may recognize its logo of the lonely traveler walking on a desert road. The company was owned by Disney and founded in 1992, and released several family-orientated movies, including The Three Musketeers, Angels in the Outfield, Heavyweights, and even some more adult-orientated ones like While You Were Sleeping, 6 Days, 7 Nights, and G.I. Jane. Ugh, please don't let Chris Rock make any jokes about that one. Ugh. And so, the Inspector Gadget movie is the last movie the company would produce, where it would become defunct and evolve into Spyglass Entertainment. So yeah, the Inspector Gadget movie marked the end of an era of a movie company that released a string of well-known movies during the 90s, which bowed out with the decade itself. Number 2, Inspector Gadget lost Disney $30 million. So things were off to a bad start when Inspector Gadget was shown to a test audience, which apparently was so abysmal, the movie's original 110-minute duration was cut down to 78 minutes. Yeah, just 1 hour and 18 minutes long. No disappearing to toilet breaks in this movie, or by the time you come back, it'll probably be finished. Inspector Gadget finally made his way onto the big screen in July 1999 and brought in $134 million on a $90 million budget. And it's been said that all up, the movie would make Disney lose $30 million. My guess, probably because it couldn't match all the marketing and other undisclosed costs. So it was clear that this was not going to be a big hit. Apparently, upon its release, it was in the number 2 spot in the box office behind The Haunting remake. Yeah, look, you know there's a problem when your movie is no match for The Haunting remake. Oh dear. Despite some of the performances being praised, the movie got overwhelmingly negative reviews from critics, with the New York Times labeling it, quote, a waste of good talent, and Roger Ebert taking exception to the fact that you can see Dr. Claw's face in the movie. Hey, I guess Ebert was an Inspector Gadget fanboy, and seeing Dr. Claw's face just didn't fit his headcanon. I can sort of remember it at the time. There wasn't really much hype for this movie. Now, had it come out in 1989, then there might have been, as at that time there would have been a demand for it. But by the time you get to 1999, the Inspector Gadget buzz had died down, but it wasn't old enough yet to be a nostalgic thing. That, and there was already an oversaturation of big franchise movies, as well as blockbuster movies in general, with the likes of The Phantom Menace, The Matrix, Toy Story 2, The Mummy, and Austin Powers 2. And so the Inspector Gadget movie sort of came and went and didn't really leave its mark. And just like that, poof, it was gone. Still, there was the Inspector Gadget Happy Meal toy, where Inspector Gadget had that comically large hat. Oh, God, look at that thing! Oh God, is he compensating or what? Hey, at the end of the day, I guess it got a Happy Meal because the Inspector Gadget movie didn't feature the penguin puking up green slime. And so, theoretically speaking, that should have been the end of this Inspector Gadget movie franchise. Except that it wasn't. Number 1. The Inspector Gadget sequel got better reviews than its original. So, in 2003, 4 years after the release of the first movie, there was a sequel, in the form of Inspector Gadget 2, a straight-to-video release. This time, the movie starred French Stewart as Inspector Gadget, because, hey, I guess he had already ruined Home Alone, so why not? Okay, that's just a joke. And to be fair to Stewart, he actually does capture the energy, mannerisms, and voice of Gadget, as seen in the 80s cartoon. So, to be fair, he probably is a better Gadget than Broderick. What I find interesting is the sequel was filmed here in Australia, namely Brisbane, Queensland. And something I find really fascinating is Gadget's Chief Quimby was played by Australian actor Mark Mitchell, who fellow Australians of my generation will always know as Harold Gribble from the Australian children's TV show Round the Twist. I'm sorry, I just can't get my head around the fact that Mr. Gribble was also Chief Quimby. And if you can believe it, Inspector Gadget 2 got better reviews from critics than its predecessor, and the first movie currently has 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, whereas Part 2, the straight-to-video sequel, has 40%. So it does seem that this entry was embraced more by audiences. As for that first movie, where do I stand with it? Well, I think it was misguided. I can remember watching it for the first time, and the style of the movie, the fibers of it, the language of it, if you will, just felt off. It didn't remotely feel like the original TV show. To me, the Inspector Gadget movie felt less like the 1980s cartoon and more Nickelodeon, in that it looked and felt more like those weird kiddie sitcoms Nickelodeon made back then. It's not just me, right? This looks and feels like one of those Nickelodeon sitcoms from back in the day, yeah? It's ironic that it stars Matthew Broderick, because I think this movie does to Inspector Gadget what the previous year's Godzilla movie did to the Godzilla legend, in that it feels disconnected from its source. But, you know, I understand if some people do have a nostalgic love for it. But for me, my love for Inspector Gadget will always lie in that original cartoon from the 80s. I guess it all makes sense because during the 90s, there were several movies being made that were based on older existing properties that were aimed at children, like Dennis the Menace, The Little Rascals, The Flintstones, Richie Rich, and Casper, and all of them were pretty much flops or seen as disappointing. So it makes sense that the decade should end with another attempt at this gimmick of cinematic versions of all children's media. However though, with the dawn of a new decade and millennium, it seems that things did finally start to pick up with the Scooby-Doo movie. But that's a story for another time. And all in all, the Inspector Gadget movie did feature this foot, so at least Quentin Tarantino would have been happy. So to sum up the Inspector Gadget movie, well, it's an interesting attempt to try and bring to life a popular cartoon onto the big screen, even if it did miss the mark. Hi, I'm Minty, and that was my exploration into the Inspector Gadget movie. I personally don't see it as awful. It's just a wacky kids movie of its time. Just one that, you know, probably didn't hit a chord with me personally. Anyway, I'm Minty, and seriously, just imagine it. An Inspector Gadget movie directed by Martin Scorsese. Man, that effed up idea makes my heart glow with joy. See ya!